topic of this video is the properties of numbers. All these different properties. I need you to pause the video and write these down. Copy the entire box. The first property up top is the reflexive property. It says any quantity is equal to itself. The reflexive property means that if you write anything in math, anything, 34 is equal to 34. Why would that be useful? Well, that's useful because of this next property, the symmetric property. If one quantity equals the second quantity, then the second one equals the first. If we have something equal, like in the first one, we had 34. 34 could be equal to 17 plus 17. Well, 17 could be equal to 14 plus 13. 14 plus 3. And we can combine this with the next property, the transitive one. If one quantity equals a second, and a second equals a third, then the first equals the last. So what that's saying is A equals B, B equals C, so then it is true that if B is equal to C and A is equal to B, this could just be written as one equation where A is equal to C, B is equal to A, everything is equal, and we just have this loop of equality. Now how does that connect to the last two examples? 34 equals 17 plus 17, but the number 17 right here, 17 is equal to 14 plus 3. So we could write this as 17 plus 14 plus 3, or we could write this as 14 plus 3 plus 14 plus 3 is equal to 34. These rules are the explanation for why we can rewrite numbers different ways. The substitution property says that if two things are equal, then you can replace one of them with what it is equal to anytime you want. If two things are equal, then you can replace one with the other at any time. This is super important in about 9 weeks or 10 weeks and next year in the spring. The example they have is if n is equal to 11, then if you wanted to do 4 times n, that would be 4 times 11. If we gave you the number 88, that would be equal to 8 times 11. 11 is equal to n. 11 is equal to n. Well, there's the number 11 right there. So we can just swap and replace. Instead of writing 11, you could write n. The purpose of these properties is so that we can manipulate numbers to fit our whims. I want an answer. I want it now, so I'm going to change these numbers around. As long as I follow these rules, you can change numbers around so that you can get an answer. Starting with the additive identity. For any number a, the sum of a and 0 is a. So what this means is, there. So you throw this in, after you write that, throw in this next to it. 0 is the only number you can add that won't change what you have. You can see in the example, 2 plus 0 equals 2. 0 plus 2 equals 2. 46 plus 0 equals 46. Write all of this down in your journal. Pause the video if you need to, because I'm moving on. The additive inverse. A number and its opposite are additive inverses of each other. That means that's used in combination with the additive identity most often. If 0 is the only number that you can add and it won't change anything, then maybe it's useful to be able to throw a 0 onto whatever you're doing. Then what you can do is this. You add the opposite to what you already have. If you had 46 and you wanted to spend all of your money, you want to find out how much money could I spend until I have $0. Well, you could add a negative 46. You add the same thing but the opposite, and it will always give you 0. 46 plus negative 46 equals 0. This 4 minus 4 equals 0. You say, well, that's not addition. Yes, it is. 4 plus negative 4 equals 4 minus 4 equals 0. Subtraction is the same thing as adding a negative number. Multiplicative identity. We had an additive identity. You also have one if you multiply. The only number that you can multiply that will give you the same number back is 1. 1 is the only number that you can multiply by that won't change the value. One is the only number that you can multiply by that won't change the value. 14 times 1 is 14. 1 times 14 is 14. Pause it when you need to. Multiplicative property of 0. If you ever want to cancel something out, or if you ever want the answer to be 0, the only way ever that you will multiply something and get 0 as the answer is if you multiply by 0. There is no number you can multiply, like 24 times some fraction, it will never give you 0. The only way you will get 0 is if you do 24 times 0. So if you have 24 times x equals 0, then the only way that this is true is if that variable is equal to 0. It must be 24 times 0 equals 0. So then x is 0. The multiplicative inverse. For every number that's a fraction, there is exactly one number that's also a fraction, so that if you multiply them together, your answer will be 1. Multiplicative inverse says, no matter what you have the number 20. Well, that number 20 is the same thing as 20 over 1. And if you have the number 20, If you take 20 and you multiply by 1 divided by 20, then you'll get the number 1. If you ever multiply by the multiplicative inverse, your answer will be 1, no matter what the fraction is. If you have a plus b divided by 1, if you multiply that by the flip of it, by the multiplicative inverse, 1 over a plus b, then this would be equal to 1. Another word for multiplicative inverse, another word is aka the reciprocal. You should have learned that. That's what you use when you're dividing fractions. Normally, whenever you do 4/5 divided by 3/5, you always keep, change, and flip. Well, this here is the multiplicative inverse of 3/5. 5/3 is the multiplicative inverse of 3/5, but the little boy word, the little baby word for it is the reciprocal. But I'm not teaching you this right now. That's something you should know or that you will practice more of later. We have a few more properties that you need to copy down today. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section below.